डॉक्टर बाबा साहेब आंबेडकर ओपन यूनिवर्सिटी।
नमस्कार, मेरा नाम आशुतोष भोगना है और मैं सर्टिन में एज ए साइंटिस्ट डी कार्यरत हूँ। आज हम साइबर सिक्योरिटी एश्योरेंस विषय पर चर्चा करेंगे। सो आवर लर्निंग ऑब्जेक्टिव इज टू अंडरस्टैंड साइबर सिक्योरिटी एश्योरेंस। Then we will discuss the cyber security assurance framework in India. We will discuss cyber security maturity models. We will see how the self-assessment and audits can help us to get the cyber security assurance, and then we will discuss the cyber security exercises. So what is the basically the cyber security assurance? So assurance, as we know, is a fact-based confidence. That's the we understand what the confidence is, but the assurance is the different from the confidence. It's the fact based. You have some fact, based on that you are assured that in a such a way in cyber security assessment of effectiveness of controls, are they working as we believe, our firewall is working as it is configured. So that's the cyber security assurance, getting an assurance on the controls you implemented, whether it's working effectively or not. So cybersecurity assurance is a measure of confidence that the security features and architecture of systems accurately enforce the desired security. It's working what it is intended to do. When we see from the cybersecurity point of view, the assurance can be at a three levels. The organizational level. Organizational level means the controls implemented by an organization to do the cybersecurity. So they have to see how well their technical controls and policies are working, whether they are effective or not to protect against the cyber threats. That's the organizational level. Sectoral level. Sectoral level, sector specific, like we have a different sectors. We have a oil and gas, we have a power sectors, we have a defense sectors, we have a transport sectors. So at that sector, whether that sector, the controls implemented by that sectors, policy initiated by that sectors are effective or not in assuring the cyber security of that specific sector. That's the sectoral level assurance. Then there is a national level. At a country level, we want to see how our country is, how our critical information infrastructure are, whether they are protected from cyber threats or not. So that's the national level cyber security assurance, and that's the basically to ensure that our critical infrastructure is protected from the cyber threats and the malicious actors. So that's the assurance. So how we will, what are the methods there to generate that assurance, how we will verify that the controls implemented are correct. So if you will see in a cybersecurity assurance framework in India, then you may refer to the National Cybersecurity Policy 2013 that's available on the Ministry of Electronics and IT websites, and that policy talks about compliance and assessments. That policy talks about the cybersecurity assurance frameworks, and it states that the focus is on the creation, establishment and operation of cybersecurity assurance framework aimed at enabling government, critical infrastructure organization and key IT users of a nation's economy. The main objectives are to protect the critical information infrastructure and the cybersecurity assurance framework. So in a cybersecurity assurance framework, basically two types of steps are there. That's the enabling and endorsing. So in enabling, what we are expecting is that based on the advisory, based on the regulation in a cybersecurity, based on the promotions. So those are the enabling actions for implementing the cybersecurity in a country as per the national cybersecurity policy. Then there are endorsing actions such as providing the trainings, such as the conducting the audits, such as the empanelment of information security auditing organizations by certain, the certification program in a cybersecurity. Those are the endorsing actions. So those things are at a national level to ensure the cybersecurity assurance of a country. Then what are the tools available with us to generate the cybersecurity assurance? So there are cyber security maturity models. So what the basically the maturity models are? Maturity models are the benchmark against which you can assess and find out where you stand today and where you have to move to further improve your posture. So that's the basically the concept of the maturity models, and it's having the labels, that's we can say also the ladders which the organization can move step by step. So the basically the maturity models help organization to define its current posture, what is your current cyber security posture, determines its future and more mature state, how you can reach to the next state. That's the you can do from the maturity model. Identify the capabilities and skill set it must attain to reach that future issues. So what the organization need to do to go to that next step, that's the can be defined by the maturity models. So this is the one of the maturity model known as a cyber security capability maturity model, C2M2. So in C2M2 it's to provide a flexible guidance to help organization to develop and improve their cyber security capabilities. So there are 10 domains basically with 4 maturity indicators. So what are the maturity indicators? It's defined as a maturity indicator 0, maturity indicator level 1, maturity indicator level 2, and then 3. So maturity indicator level 0 is there is no practices in that domain. 1 is there are initial practices in that domain. Then there are practices at regular and performed in a systematic manner. So there are practices, those are regular, it's not an ad hoc basis. Then there are a maturity level 3rd, that's practices are, it's matured enough, it's managed by the high level management, there are a top level policies for managing the cyber security of that particular domain in the 10 domains that are listed in a C2M2. So this is the list of those 10 domains. You can go through them, like a risk management, like workforce management, cyber security program management, supply chain management. So those things, those domains are there, and then organization can do their assessment where they stand in those 10 domains, maturity level 0 to maturity level 3, and then what they need to do to improve to move to the next maturity level. So that's the how the maturity models can be used, and C2M2 can be used for the improving the cyber security posture of the organization, to assess and improve the cyber security posture. So here is a link, you can get a more detail from about the C2M2. So you can go to the link and read more about this maturity model. Then there is a maturity model known as a cyber security capability maturity model, that is CMM. It's for the nations, it's for the countries, developed by the Global Cyber Security Capacity Center, and it's provide directions and assessment model for the governments, for the nations in 5 domains. So there are a cyber security policy and strategy as a first domain. Then there is a cyber culture and society. Then there is a cyber security education, training and skills. Then there are legal and regulatory frameworks. Then the 5th one is the standards, organization and technology. So this model CMM help the nations to find out what they are doing, what their current posture against these 5 dimensions, and what they need to do to improve them further. So that can help in the more mature state of a country. So maturity levels in defining this model are the startup, formative, then the established, strategic and dynamic. So startup means they are starting up, and then to the more mature model. So in each of the 5 dimensions that can be assessed, and then the nation can decide what they need to do to move to the next level. So these are help as the benchmark for the country to develop their improve their cyber security postures. So details of this model is also available at the link given at a slide. So you can visit the Cyber Security Capacity Center and can have a look on the this CMM model for the nations. Then there is a other method for doing the generating the assurance. There's the self-assessments and audits. Self-assessment is basically the assessment done by the organization against any maturity model or a framework. So frameworks such as any cyber security framework or any other regulatory framework or ISO 27001, those type of standards can also be used for the internal audits and the assessments. So self-assessment is the self-assessment by the organization of their posture, how good they are in the cyber security and what they need to do to further improve. So audits, in the case of audits are the basically the internal or external audit. So internal audits are done by the organization and external by the third party auditors to verify and to see against the standard some audit criteria that organization is what their posture is. So if you see the formal definition of audits, it's the systematic. It should not be the ad hoc. It should be the systematic. It should be the independent. Means the auditor should not be have any relationship with the auditee, and it should be a documented process. You should document the audit process and audit findings for obtaining the audit evidences. Audit evidences we have to collect during the audits and evaluate them against extent to the audit criteria are fulfilled. So we have to find out to which extent the audit criteria, whatever our audit criteria is, whether it's fulfilled or not. So that we have to we can see from the audits that can help us to generate the assurance. So types of audit is the first party audit, second party and the third party. So first party means you are conducting the internal audits. So in case of an internal audit, organizations are conducting their own audit. Second party audit when the organization client is conducting audit on them. So the client wants some services, but before giving them any contract and assignment, they want to conduct their audit. Then the third party is the third party auditor. They provide the certificate that the audit is performed by some third independent party. So that's the third independent party. It's not a client, it's not an internal audit, it's a third independent party for conducting the audit. So what can be the audit criteria be? It can be the ISO 27001, you may be aware about it. It's the information security management system. There could be the vulnerability assessment and penetration testing against the vulnerability assessment frameworks and penetration testing framework. That could be against NIST cybersecurity framework. That could be against the maturity model. So those are basically our audit criteria. What is generally performed in audit activities are these steps: initiating the audit, then preparing the audit activities, conducting, then preparing and distributing the audit report, completing the audit, conducting the audit follow-up, whether the findings are corrected or not. So that's the audit follow-up. So these are the basic steps taken by the auditor for conducting the audit. Okay, so cyber security exercises are another the method which we can use for the generating the assurance to find out how organizations are doing, how sectors are doing, how countries are performing. The cyber security exercises are of a different type. Functional exercises, operational exercises, simulated exercises, discussion-based tabletop exercises. You can go through this classification in the slide to see different type of cyber security exercises. So basically, when it comes for exercise type selection, which type of exercise we should select, so it may depend upon the maturity of our organizations and the extent they want to do the assessment. So extent to do they want to do, so they can do the walkthrough, they can do the desktop exercises, they can do the hypothetical scenario based exercise, or they can go to for the full simulated exercises. What is suggested in this slide is that based on the maturity, cyber security maturity of the organization only, they should go for the full simulated exercises, and they should start from the basic exercises such as a desktop walkthrough or a tabletop exercises or the quizzes. So that basic type of exercise they should start, and then slowly they should move for a full simulated cyber security exercises. So in this slide give you the example of a simulated attack based exercise. In that there is a red team which is launching the attack on a setup of a participant. The participant may have typically intrusion detection system, monitoring system, communication devices, and then some setup to protect from against the attack. And on the exercise day, the red team will launch the attack on the that exercise setup. And then what the participant has to do, they have to respond as per their incident response plan. They have to investigate the incident, they have to respond to the incident, and then that exercise will bring out any gaps, if there is any in their plan, if there is any gap in their standard operating procedure, any gap in their policies, what they need to improve, that will come out from the simulated exercise. So this is one type of exercise that we discuss. So, based on the targets, the cybersecurity exercises are classified as organizational exercises. The exercises conducted within an organization, maybe for the cybersecurity assurance awareness, maybe for the improving the coordination between different groups. Then there is a sectoral exercises in which a particular sector is on a target, like a finance sector. So all banks may participate in that exercise, and scenario and attacks will be based on the that particular sector. Then there are national exercises. National exercises are conducted in India also. That's the conducted at a country level. Then there are regional and international exercises where multiple nations participate to improve their coordination and collaboration in case of a cyber incidents and a cyber crisis. So this is the summary of this session. We discuss about the assurance, the importance of assurance in cyber security controls. What are the methods to generate that assurance? We discuss the tools, the different maturity models, the cyber security assurance exercises, audits, maturity models, and the self-assessment. So those things can be used for the generating the cyber security assurance at different levels, that like we discussed at the organization level, sector level, and the national level. So that's all for this session. Thank you.
स्वाध्यायः परमं तपः। स्वाध्यायः परमं
डॉक्टर बाबा साहेब आंबेडकर ओपन यूनिवर्सिटी।
नमस्कार, मेरा नाम आशुतोष बहुगुणा है और मैं इंडियन कंप्यूटर इमरजेंसी रिस्पांस टीम में एज ए साइंटिस्ट डी कार्यरत हूँ। इस सेशन में हम चर्चा करेंगे malwares पे, what the malwares are. So this session is about introduction to the malwares. So learning objective of this session is the introduction to the malware word. So it's the basic definition and types of different malwares. We will see malware functionality. We will have a look on that. Current affairs, current threat landscape. We will see. We will discuss the some detection and prevention steps against the malware. So what the malware is? Malware is a malicious program. It's the set of instructions that run on your computer and make your system do something that an attackers want it to do. So a malware is a piece of a software that execute on your system with a objective, with the intention specified by the attackers. So this is something unwanted for you, unwanted for a victim. So that's the malware. So malicious program. So what they can accomplish, so what the malware can do, how it can damage to the victim. It can steal the personal information, the sensitive information in your devices, maybe in your mobile, your desktop, your laptops. So it can steal the personal information. It can delete the file. It can do some click frauds. In click frauds, it can steal software serial numbers, use your computer as relay to further attack. So that can also be done by the malicious program malware. Cyber war and weapons of mass destruction. So this malware can be used for conducting the huge attack on us critical information infrastructures. So that's the and for the destruction in the destruction in the critical infrastructure such as nuclear plants, power plants, oil and gas industries, and finance sectors. So that's the what the malware can do. So there are categories depend upon the features, how it is executed, downloaded, and different features. There are categories of malware. So you may be aware about the backdoor, Trojan horses, rootkit, virus, scareware, adware, worm. So there is a difference based on the functionality, the features they have, and the way of executions. There are different categories of a malware. So like a backdoor. So backdoor is the something a program, malicious program, which is providing a backdoor access to the attacker. So attacker can snoop into your computer, can listen to and can capture the keystrokes, can log all the activities of your computer. So that's the backdoor control to the attacker. Trojan horses is sometimes you will find out that you installed some software, and then along with that software there is a one malicious program which is providing again a backdoor access to the attacker. So those are the Trojan horse softwares which is having on a front end it looks like a genuine software, a software of some use, and at a backdoor it's doing the malicious activity on behalf of attackers. Then there are a virus, then there are a scareware, adware, and a worm. So these are the different types of malware. So like we said that in a Trojan horse, a Trojan describes the class of a malware that appears to perform a desirable function, but in fact to perform undisclosed malicious function also that allow unauthorized access to the victim computer. So it performs a desirable function also, like maybe your editing software, so that it's provide that features, but in a backend it provides some undisclosed malicious functions also that allow unauthorized access to the victim's computer. So Trojan horses are the programs with hidden malicious functionality. The functionality, malicious functionality is hidden, appear to be screensavers, game, or other useful program. There is a app for that, iPhone app, and things like that. So those are the Trojan horse. So what the Trojan horse can do, it can do the remote administration to complete control of a victim machine. So complete control of the victim laptop or a desktop device. So it can steal the data and a file from computer. It can further conduct the distributed attacks, attacks in a zombie network, such as distributed denial of service attack. So your device may participate in a distributed denial of service because it's under control of an attacker. Trojan horse can be used for password stealing or the audio video capture, key logging. Key logging means whatever you are kept typing, pressing the key is transferred to the attacker. Adware means pop-up and providing the advertisements. Logic bump only executed when a specific trigger condition is met. So these are the features. So worm, what is a worm? So if you will see the definition, it's a self-replicated computer program, and of course it's having a malicious functionality, but it's a self-replicating. So human intervention is not required. It will replicate. You may be aware about the recent WannaCry ransomware attack. So that worm is having a worm capability also by self-replicating. So the self-replicating through the network. So one computer is compromised, it will scan and look for other victims, and then if the vulnerability is there, it will spread to that system also. So like that, it's a self-replicating behavior. So worms are a malicious program with a self-replicating behavior. So they can spread via email attachment. Sometimes you will receive an email saying that please download this software, this is of some use, visit this website. That website will download a worm to your system. LAN or a internet. So from the LAN or a internet, if system is a vulnerable, weak, and patch is not there, so worm may infect that system. So second generation of worms automatically search for a vulnerable computer and infect them. So worm automatically search for this vulnerable computers and then compromise them. So whole internet can be infected in less than 20 minutes. So the vulnerabilities are there within 20 minutes. It can be, all the system can be infected. So worm versus virus versus Trojan horse. So virus is a code embedded in a file or a program. So viruses and Trojan horse rely on human intervention. Human intervention means you have to click somewhere, you have to download something, you have to install something. So a human intervention is required. But in case of a worms, it's a self contained and it is spread automatically. So human intervention is not required. So that's the difference. So what is a rootkit? A rootkit is a component that uses still to maintain a persistent and undetectable presence on the machine. So rootkit is a software or a malicious program that maintain a persistence backdoor persistence existence in within the compromised machine. Then there are a ransomware attack recently, you may be aware about that. What they do? So they encrypt the systems and then ask for a ransom. So examples is a Locky ransomware. Examples are a recent WannaCry, NotPetya, Bad Rabbit. So those are the ransomware. So what it is doing, it's asking for a ransom. So the system is locked, encrypted, and then a decryption key is required to decrypt. Otherwise, you cannot access your system. And then to decrypt that, the attackers are asking for a ransom. They are asking for it in a cryptocurrency. They are asking, you have to pay to my wallets this much amount of money, then I will give you the key. So that's the ransomware situation. They are asking for a ransom by encrypting the systems. There are a banking trojans also, like a Zeus. The purpose of those trojans is to financial gain. So what type of it could be? So banking trojans could be like a Zeus. It can infect the system and capture the keys if there is a bank net banking attempt and things like that, so that it can capture the username passwords of the victim. The malwares are also, trojans and malwares are also present in ATM and point of sale machines and the devices used for the basically the financial transactions. So at a POS or ATM, if you dip your card and use your PIN code, so that may be captured if that device or a machine is infected from some malware, and that data is then to transfer to the attacker, and then attacker can clone and make your copy of your card, and he is having access to the code also. So then unauthorized transaction can be made by the attacker. So banking trojans means that trojan is especially focused for the with the objective to do the financial gain for an attacker, financial loss for a victim. So web malware. So we have seen the how the virus can or a malware can be distributed, how it spreads. So the one way may be the email. So you are receiving in an email, and that then you clicked and downloaded something. That's the way. Or you received it in a pen drive, CD drive, and then the infected drive, and then you inserted it into your system, and your system is also. What is the other way? The other way is the web malware. So instead of sending it through either email or through the pen drive, CD, what can be done by the attacker? What is done by the attacker is to distribute the malware through the well-known websites. So compromise the well-known websites, compromise the genuine websites, and then inject the scripts to forward the victim browser to the malicious website to download the exploit kits and malware. There is a recent cases of a currency miners. So in a currency miners, the browsers are mining, the victim browsers are mining the cryptocurrency. If you are aware of the concept of a cryptocurrency and mining, otherwise you can do in the depth study of that. So of that attack, and that how the browsers were utilized by compromising a genuine website. Browsers of victims are utilized for mining the cryptocurrency. Then there is a blended hybrid threats, that's we call the blended threats. It's it contains the characteristics of all this: the viruses, worms, self-replicating trojans, malicious scripts, and we call them this blended. It's hard to know where to draw the line. So generally, the malicious program may have more than one features also. Point of sale malware targets the point of sale terminals in the maybe in shopping complex shops. You are aware about point of sale terminals. We are making a transaction there. We are giving our card and details there, and the POS device are this is connected to the computers. So it's also vulnerable, same as your desktop and a traditional computer. So POS terminal often process hundreds and thousands of transactions per day. So compromising one POS terminal, so the data is the huge data that could be harvested by the attacker, and then they can conduct the fraud. So black POS is one such example. You can see that in depth. So then there are bots and botnets. So what is a bots? The term derived from the robot. Botnet is a network of a bot. So it's a zombie computer, compromised computer, which is under control of an attacker. So bot is basically a compromised computer which is compromised by attacker, under control of an attacker by some malware. And then botnet is a network of those compromised computers. Those are known as a botnet. So recently there are a Internet of a Things based devices are also found to be part of a botnet. Internet of Things like a CCTV cameras, maybe refrigerator, household appliances. Those all things we are connecting over the internet. So Internet of the Things, those are also compromised and turns into the bots to do the malicious activity. So that's the botnet. So botnet architecture is this. If you look at that slide, that attacker is there through command and control. Command and control is the central nerve of that botnet, and then through command and control, the attacker controls the compromised zombie machines, and then launch the attacks, such as a distributed denial of service attack, spamming, or for some other crime and frauds. So basically the attacker is using your compromised system for conducting all those malicious activities. So what the architecture of a command and control server is that it could be peer-to-peer, P2P, or it could be centralized server client model. So in a server client model, the attacker is having a one CNC, and then all the compromised zombies are connecting to that centralized server. And in case of a peer-to-peer, any of the this compromised machine can act as a command and control server. So that's the basically different architecture. So through the command and control server, the attacker is managing the botnet, giving command to it. So this is C2 server, command and control server. That's the heart of that this thing, botnet. So the Twitter or maybe any social media website can also act as a command and control. How that hey, if I will tweet this, the compromised machine will react in this way. If I will tweet Y, the compromised machine will react on that way. And compromised machine has to listen to that command and control server for every 15 minutes for my tweet. So that's basically the way how attacker control the command and control. So typical classification, if you see, so how the botnets are, is star. Star means all the zombies are there, and then they are connected to centralized. Then there are hierarchical also. There is peer-to-peer also. So in hierarchical, this first CNC is there. Then under that another CNC is there. Then maybe the further also the CNCs are there, and then peer-to-peer, anyone can act as a command and control. Multi-server is there. So any multiple servers command and control is there. So the benefit is that it's for the attackers is that in peer-to-peer it's difficult to bring down the botnet. So as an investigation team and agencies are trying to bring down the botnets. So what they will do, they try to capture the command and control and bring down that command and control. It's easy to, in case of a centralized server, star topology, so to bringing it down, that okay, entire botnet is done. But in case of a multiple server, hierarchical, and this peer-to-peer, it's difficult to wipe out the entire botnet. So then there are a IoT botnet, as we were discussing. So ADSL router, surveillance cameras, household and industrial appliances, automobiles, are those connected devices, IoT devices are compromised, and they were part of a botnet. That botnet is the Mirai botnet was there. That Mirai botnet compromised those devices. So generally how those devices are compromised are the vendor supplied default username password was there, or the some were not properly patched, vulnerabilities were there. So those devices were compromised by attacker, and then a botnet was created. So Mirai and IoT Reaper. So I suggest you to go through the studies of Mirai and details of IoT Reaper. So those botnets were there. Those IoT advanced, this advanced malicious botnets were available against the Internet of the Things. Then there are mobile threats. We already had a problem with the computers and for the malware, and then we have a mobile malware. So mobile malware means they are targeting your mobile devices, maybe your tablets, your mobile devices, and today we have a mobile devices with capability of a computers, full computers. We can do many things. We store many information there. So mobile malware are targeting to Android devices, and they are used for generally for stealing the information or for snooping and listening and stealing credentials of the victim. So there are a certain alert on recent Android Trojan. You can visit in the website. So we used to update and release the alert and advisory on a regular basis on the Trojan and malware, and so those details are available at a certain website. So www.crt-in.org.in you can visit. So alert section or advisory section you can have a look at. So today that mostly we have seen that ransomware is of this exploiting in a wild, and bots and botnets are criminally motivated. Professionally written codes are there, and steal identity, passwords, DDoS attacks are conducted. So these are the problems, recent problems. So then there is this Windows features are abused by the recently malware like PowerShell, WMI. So these things are exploited and used by abused by the attacker. That comes the fileless malware. In case of a fileless malware, this is the category, means the attack, like you can see if the command there, so everything is executed in a primary memory and no file is dropped into the system. So that's why they are called a fileless malware. So suppose a PowerShell script or something is invoked and everything executed, so detection of these malware becomes difficult. Then the malware author attackers are using a technique, evasive techniques, anti-security techniques. So anti-security techniques means the malware check for presence of anti-malware engines, firewall, application content, and then behave differently. The anti-security techniques to evade the further investigation. Anti-sandbox techniques, malware detects if it is executing in a virtual environment, then it change the behavior or execute in a different way. Anti-analysis technique, based on the tools, it detects the malware analyst based on the tools like Process Explorer, Wireshark, some process monitoring tools if installed in the system. So then it's obfuscate to avoid the reverse engineering. So those techniques are within the malware author used to build within the malware. So what is the prevention? Prevention is the awareness, practice basic cyber security hygienes, patch the system, update your browsers, plugins, operating systems, keep it up to date, use firewall, HIDS, host-based intrusion detection system, antivirus solution, anti-malware, and scan using the keep it updated and scan your system and files for the any malware threat. Detection, for detection we have antivirus scanners and custom signatures we can create. So in antivirus scanners we have online and offline. Offlines are which is installed into our system. Online, such as a virus totals, are there to scan for a malicious file or a document. Then there are a custom signature indicators of a compromise, and Yara rules are used for finding out the infection detection of the malware infection within a system or a network. So this references, you visit the certain website at Virus Alert at this website, and can have a look at the recent virus alerts. So that's all for this session. Thank you.
स्वाध्यायः परमं तपः स्वाध्यायः परमं
डॉक्टर बाबा साहेब आंबेडकर ओपन यूनिवर्सिटी।
नमस्कार, मेरा नाम आशुतोष बहुगुणा है और मैं इंडियन कंप्यूटर इमरजेंसी रिस्पांस टीम में एज ए साइंटिस्ट डी कार्यरत हूँ। इस सेशन में वी विल डिस्कस अबाउट द सोशल इंजीनियरिंग, व्हाट इट इज। सो सोशल इंजीनियरिंग is the manipulating the human being, tricking them, luring them. So that's the social engineering. So the objective of this session is to understand the social engineering and define the goals of social engineering, the impact, what the impact of the social engineering can be, the types of social engineering, and the sign, how you can recognize the sign of social engineering, and the defending against the social engineering attacks. So social engineering techniques. So what is the social engineering basically? Social engineering is the manipulating the human being, manipulating your tendency to trust. So suppose I will call you, hello, I'm your friend, friend of your friends, and then can you give me and help me in this way? Can you provide me your password? Or maybe the other example is that, hey, I am calling from this bank and your password is logged, and you have to provide these details and OTP numbers. And then so those techniques of manipulating the human being is the social engineering techniques, and those techniques are used by the attackers, hackers, to compromise the systems or to attack the network of an organization. So what types of social engineering techniques are there is there in this slide. So social engineering techniques like can be a shoulder surfing. Shoulder surfing means someone is standing behind me and looking what I am typing or what I am pressing. So that's the shoulder surfing. And there is maybe the phishing attack, and you receive a email stating that please fill your username password in this bank website since it need to be reset, some contextual email, and then you click and provide it. So those are the phishing attempts. There is a dumpster diving. So like we are throwing out papers from our office or maybe, and then someone may look at those papers and those documents and can gather the information and the crucial information about the organization. So then there is a Trojan horses, the malware. Trojan horse means which listen, installed into your computer and listen and monitor your activities and transfer the details to the attackers. So there are those techniques. Then there are pop-ups. Sometimes on your screen the pop-ups comes up saying that you need to clean your system, antivirus pop-up or some advertisement pop-ups. Those pop-ups or forms are social engineering techniques that may steal your data. So these are the techniques generally employed for tricking the people. Then there is vishing also. Vishing is over the phone. Over the phone, someone is calling and tricking the users to provide the sensitive information like a card details, password of a server, bank details, things like that. So if we look at the formal definition of a social engineering, so it's the manipulating a person into knowingly or unknowingly giving up information. So the objective is to manipulate the person so that it reveals the information to the attacker. So that's the basically the psychological manipulation or tricking or luring the individual for the information gathering. and understanding social engineering. So social engineering is the art that refer to the psychological manipulation of the people. It is said that the human are the weakest link in the cyber security, and it's very easy to trick the human being. So what is the need to run a sophisticated tool to compromise a firewall or server, when by a simple call, giving a call to a help desk or an engineer and manipulating them, I can get a password, the attacker can get a sensitive information. So what is the need to run a sophisticated tool to compromise a server? So that's the social engineering. It's a low hanging fruit, anyone can do it to trick the users. So like we see in many spams mail you may be receiving in your inbox, so saying a lottery email or some gift is coming to you or some bank related. What are these? These are the phishing attempts. These are the attempts to lure you. These are the attempts to trick you. So either you will provide the information or click on the link or download something into your system that is the malware that will further snoop into your computer and provide your information to the attackers. And then what the attackers will do with your information is to uh, misuse it, or the launch attack against your organization, or to do the financial fraud if the attack is on the individual. So one of the ways to looking that you may have visited the websites and they have a secret question type of a thing. So if you forget your password, use a secret question. So secret question is the what is your first school, what is your maiden name, what is your birth city. So those are the simple questions, they are just secret questions, and these are the information easily provided. So these are the information can be easily collected from your social media accounts, or you can provide to your friends, or you can provide over the phone also, or to different platform. So suppose I know the question, so I know the answer, I know your pet name, I know your favorite color is blue, and then what I can do, I can visit that website and ask for I forget my password on your behalf, and then I provide secret answer, the favorite color is blue, so I can get access to your account. So those are the misusing the information, revealing the information, misusing. So why the social engineering is effective? So it's our tendency to trust, it's our tendency to believe. So it's the interaction and with the attackers, and they are tricking the people. There is no such policy or a progress to ensure the complete security from a cyber social engineering attacks, because there are various ways. So there is we cannot place a firewall there, we cannot create such a policy there. Only the answer to the problem of a social engineering is the awareness of human beings, so that you will be careful, cautious against the attempt of a social engineering. Employee of an organization be cautious about this tricking from the getting tricked from the malicious attackers. So the attack cycle, if we will see the attack cycle of social engineering, is the research, first finding out and gathering the information about the target, and then developing a rapport and trust with that fellow, maybe over the call or maybe over the email or the other ways, and then exploiting that trust factor, getting the information, and then after getting that information, utilize that information, execute on the target, and then recruit and cloak, means the hiding the details and path of an attack, and then evolve that attack into the further damage to the organization or an individual. Fetch information. So these are the methods in social engineering used to fetch information. So you know the we already discussed these phishing fake pop-ups. So malwares are also there. To snoop and to steal the information, or to first the thing is that using the social engineering to trick the user to installing the Trojan horse or a backdoor into their system. So these are the methods. So then in details you can see various type of a social engineering: physical attempts, physical penetration attempt, physical attempts, or the over the email, over the phone, like a phishing, wishing, and whaling is also there. Whaling is the targeting the high profile people. It's similar to phishing, but it's the targeting the high profile executives of an organization. Then there is a physical attempt, like interacting with different peoples and different employee by visiting your facilities. So those are the different type of a social engineering. So other common type techniques are the impersonations. So hey, I am calling from this bank. Hey, I am calling from help desk. Hey, I am calling from your bank. I am calling from your boss office. So trusted authority. So as a trusted authority, attacker believe and ask for a information. So you please provide this information, bank information. Otherwise, your card will be blocked. So those type of threats and tricks are made by attackers, and then they push the victim to reveal the information. Computer based is the pop-up which generates websites. So some websites are there, emails are there, chain letters are there, hoaxes are instant. You are getting those things in your box and inbox, and this pop-up in a Windows always it is there, which is asking for some information from the victim. So those tricks are there. Tools, if you want to learn about the social engineering, how it is easy it is to do, different ways to do it. So I suggest you to explore the social engineering toolkit. Social engineering toolkit is the platform, is a tool that help you to create a social engineering attacks. So social engineering attacks means malicious website you can create, malicious pen drive, malicious emails, and the spam emails you can create. So you can see you can use this tool for a good of your organization by educating them that how the attackers can trick the human being. So how can they trick the victims? So that you can use this tool for the purpose of education or conducting some short exercise within an organization for the awareness purpose by sending a email or launching a attacks in a control environment using the social engineering toolkit. So this toolkit is available in a Kali Linux Backtrack that you can download. It's an open source operating system, customized operating system for vulnerability assessment and penetration testing and security, other security tasks. So you can use that for that and explore the social engineering toolkit. One interesting thing, the category is there, quick response code is there. So generating a malicious quick response code. So what is the quick response code? If you are aware that instead of typing a complete URL into your browser, mobile browser, what you can do, you can point to the quick response code and your browser will take you to the automatically to the encoded URL. So in the case, what will happen if that is a malicious quick response code? It will take your browser to the malicious domain. So you can generate, basically you can see how the malicious quick response code can be generated from the social engineering toolkit. To understand social engineering, I must say that you must explore this tool. So what are the benefits defending against the social engineering? So you know that. What is the first thing? You know that it's the awareness. Employee awareness is the security awareness. So awareness is the key to defend against the social engineering. Then there are policies like a password policies, then there are exercises, then there are authentication and multiple authentication based mechanism, layered security, things like that, that can be taken for the defending against the social engineering. So we have listed a few best practices also. So to you, so never disclose. So the rule, the basic rule is that need to know basis. You should not disclose the information if it is not required by a person. So don't get tricked. Be aware about the threats and type of techniques used by the attacker. So limited information should be provided and should be disclosed about as an individual or about an organization. So be restricted on your social media profiles. Limited information should be uploaded there. What you are uploading as a picture, what you are uploading as a details, you have to see what information I am revealing and I am uploading on the internet that may be used against me. And if you are getting some suspicious email, so you have to investigate. You have to see that in details. Should I click on it? Should I open it? Be aware of those threats. So these are the basic practices, basic cyber hygiene principles. If you have to follow, if you follow, then you will be better protected against the social engineering attempt. So limit the information disclosure is the first thing. It should not be disclosed to all, or it should be restricted. So what type of IT infrastructure you are using? Sometimes we are preparing our resume and a CV, and then we are pasting it or a LinkedIn profile, and then we are writing that I'm working on this technology and using the server version 5.0. This is what is that? That's the that's the basically information for a attacker to, okay, this organization or this individual is using this technology, so they will use that information against tricking the human being, tricking the employee of that target. So don't answer survey calls, and don't get tricked into over the phone in a phishing attempt. Don't reveal your banking and net banking details to anyone, and don't share your password. Talk to employee about the security. Discuss in a formal or informal groups to make it interactive about the security issues and threats. Make them aware, so that everyone should watch what they say and do. So that culture should be there within an organization. Centralized response and reporting. So designate an individual or a group, and you may have a media cell for the press inquiries, or the social engineer may use the following points of a contact, like survey calls, representatives, help desk call. So these calls and these responses should be handled by the centralized entity. So then recognize a pattern that can prevent a recognize. If you are able to recognize a pattern, can see a pattern in a phishing email, phishing, if you are aware about that, you can better respond to it and can prevent against the social engineering attack. So in summary of this session, that we have discussed the social engineering, what it is. So it's the manipulating the human being, manipulating your tendency to trick, trust. So tricking you, luring you to install some malicious program to get your banking details, or to get your IT infrastructure details, to compromise the networks. Then we discuss the techniques like shoulder surfing, like the physical attempts of a penetration, social engineering such as dumpster diving. We discuss about the phishing, social engineering toolkit. We have discussed quick response code. We have discussed. Then we have discussed the countermeasure. That's the key countermeasure is the awareness of the people to defend against the social engineering. So that's all for this session. Thank you.
स्वाध्यायः परमं तपः। स्वाध्यायः परमं
डॉक्टर बाबा साहेब आंबेडकर ओपन यूनिवर्सिटी।
नमस्कार, मेरा नाम आशुतोष बहुगुणा है, और मैं इंडियन कंप्यूटर इमरजेंसी रिस्पांस टीम में एज ए साइंटिस्ट डी कार्यरत हूँ। इस सेशन में हम चर्चा करेंगे नेशनल साइबर सिक्योरिटी स्ट्रेटजीज एंड पॉलिसीज। So the learning objectives of this session is to see ITU Global Cyber Security Index and cyber wellness profiles. You will see how countries are doing and how they are managing the cyber security and what type of strategies they have in place. Then we will discuss the cyber readiness index. We will discuss few other cyber security indexes. We will also look into the national cyber security strategies. So national cyber security, many countries came up with the national cyber security strategies. Those documents are placed in public domain, and that define the objective and goal of a country to protect against the cyber attacks. So those are the cybersecurity strategies of a national cybersecurity strategy. Like in India, we have a Indian national cybersecurity policy. So and these indexes, ITU Global Cybersecurity Index, those indexes is the measure of how a country is doing in terms of the cybersecurity and what their posture is. So it's an assessment of that cybersecurity posture of that country. So let's see first the ITU, the Global Cybersecurity Index. So this is an index developed by the cooperative effort between ABI Research and the International Telecommunication Union (ITU), which aims to provide insight into the cybersecurity engagement of nations. So it gives you idea how the countries are doing in a cybersecurity. So that the cybersecurity, there is a global cybersecurity agenda, and global cybersecurity index is a part of it. So in global, this ITU Global Cybersecurity Index, they look for a 5 dimensions, 5 parameters. First is like legal measures. What are the legal measures in place the country for the cybersecurity and the cyber crimes? So then there are the technical measures. What the technical measures initiated by country and nations, and what is the progress in terms of the technical measures at a national level. Then organizational measures. What is there is an organization setup like a computer emergency response teams. Whether and what is the progress of them. Then there is a capacity building dimensions. Capacity building in cyber security. So they do the assessment in that dimension. Then there is a cooperation. Cooperation is how the country is cooperating with other nations for resolving the cyber incident. So the result is the country level index and global ranking of cyber security readiness. So it provides where the country stands. They provided index and the rank. So that's they convert that data into the qualitative measures. So the 5 parameters is the like we discussed is the legal is the first. Is the based on the existence of legal institutions and frameworks dealing with cyber security and cyber crime. So if there exists anything such as that at country, so that is the in a legal domain. That assessment is done in a legal dimension. So like in India, we have a Information Technology Act, IT Act. Technical measure is measured based on the existence of technical institutions and framework dealing with the cyber security. So whether that technical institutions like a computer emergency response teams are there or not, whether forensic laboratories are there or not, and those types of things are looked into the technical measure. Organizational measure based on the existence of the of policy coordination institutions and strategies for cyber security development at the national level. So country level, if there is a coordination institutes are there for coordinating efforts across different agencies and organizations, that's looked into the organizational dimension. Capacity building is the measure based on the existence of the research and development, education and training, the professional certification for the in a cyber security domain, whether they exist or not. And then in a cooperation, it's a measure based on the existence of partnerships, cooperation, and the information sharing networks of a nation. So on these parameters, the organization, the nation's index is calculated, and then that is rank is assigned. So the global cybersecurity index, so the 193 countries are there. They have a data and assessment of 193 countries. So research method is primary and secondary. So they are collecting the data from the secondary sources and the primary sources by asking the nations to fill the survey and provide the inputs for the research. Then the rank and the score is calculated, and in those dimension, 5 dimension, there are 17 indicators. Indicators means which exactly look for exact measure under that dimension. Then based on that 193 countries, along with the indexes, we have a cyber wellness profiles of country. Cyber wellness profile means how well that's the picture of cyber security capability of a country. So cyber wellness profile, suppose for India, You can have a look on that. The cyber wellness profile, it gives you the how the country is doing in various parameters. So in a legal, in a organizational, in a technical, in a corporations, in a capacity buildings. So that picture, that those details are there. So those informations are available in a public domain. You can search for a ITU cyber global cyber security index and wellness profile, and you will get a copy of that report. Then there is another index known as a cyber readiness index. So cyber readiness index is developed by Portman Institute for Policy Studies, and it's the publication. So for the countries, that publications for the nations, that what are their state and their maturity in cyber security, those reports are published. So a total of 125 countries have been selected for the studies, and this publication is focused on evaluating the nation state's cyber maturity as well as their overall commitment to cyber issues. So that the publication is mainly focused on policy and economic aspects of cyber security, and includes fact-based assessment. So that's there. So they is supported by facts. So it's a facts-based assessment of country cyber readiness. So cyber readiness index is there. So cyber readiness index 2.0 is having a 7 indicators. 7 indicators means into the measurement in a national strategy. Whether national strategy is defined, it's documented, it's implemented, implementation label, and things like that. Then the incident response capability of a country. Then e-crime and law enforcement is there, that existence and measurement of that. Then information sharing, cooperation is there or not. So that is the measurement of that capability. Investment in R&D, research and development activities in a cyber security, that is assessed. Then there is a diplomacy and trade for the cyber security, and then defense and crisis response for the cyber crisis response in this. So all these 7 domains make them calculate the cyber readiness index of the country, how a country is doing in all these 7 domains. So details of that report. So suppose you want to get a report for India, that detailed report is available. You can get the Portman Institute website, and then academic centers and cyber readiness index. So the reports, the cyber security readiness index of reports of countries are published there. Then there are other indexes like cyber power index. So cyber power index is developed jointly by Economist Intelligence Unit and Booz Allen Hamilton. The publication is focused on policy, organization and technical aspects of cyber security. So it's look for our policy, organization and technical aspects. So different indexes are doing the evaluation on different but similar. All the dimensions are more or less similar. They include the 39 indicators and then grouped it into the 4 categories, like a legal, then economic and social context, then technology, infrastructure and industry. So they provide the picture of that country's cyber power index of the nation. And then European Union cyber security dashboard is there. That dashboard also provide the picture cyber security posture of the European countries. It's having the 5 things like for legal foundations, then the operational entities in that country, public private partnership, sector specific cybersecurity plans and education. So based on those and the assessment of those entities create a posture of a nation. So that's the EU cybersecurity dashboard. So 28 European Union members states are there. Our aim of the dashboard is to provide a reference base to allow the evaluation of countries' policy in terms of cybersecurity against 25 criteria, and the cybersecurity stands compared to the other EU members. So how well they are doing as compared to other EU members, and how well they are doing against the baseline. That's presented from the dashboard. The publication does not have any scoring or a ranking mechanism. National cybersecurity strategy. So there are papers, good papers and a report document to go through, and that I will suggest you to go through the this one OECD, this Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. So their report is that cybersecurity policy making a turning point. So at a turning point, so that's the basically that report will provide you the different national cybersecurity strategies of a country. So those are the policy document. That's the intention of a government, national government, to protect and cooperate with other countries and protect the critical infrastructure and the services operating within the country. Then there are a comparison and discussion in a paper. That's a 19 national cybersecurity strategies. That's the International Journal of Critical Infrastructure. So here is a detail of that in a slide. You can go through it and you can have a good comparison of different strategy, what is covered in one strategy, what is not, and things like that. So national cybersecurity policy in India we already discussed in other sessions also. So what is its objective? If you look at the national cybersecurity policy, you will have an idea of the national strategy and policy for the cybersecurity. So it's if you see, it facilitates creation of a secure computing environment and enabling adequate trust and confidence in electronic transactions. That policy also provide guide stakeholders action for protection of cyberspace, outline a roadmap to create a framework for comprehensive collaboration and collective response to issues of cybersecurity, adapt an appropriate strategy both at the national and international level. So those are the objective of national cybersecurity policies. You can get it downloaded from the Ministry of Electronics and IT websites. So that policy implementation, how that policy will be implemented. So there are a few actions which are by the government, like a regulation, advisory, and guidelines. There are actions in collaboration, PPP mode, and there are actions by private enterprises and the action of the academia. So those actions, when we collaboratively take, then we can better respond to the cyber threats and make the country secure. So those things and action plan are basically covered by the national strategies. Snapshot of efforts is two dimensions. In case of a national cybersecurity policy of India, that national and international. National, what we will do, what efforts we have to take. Internationally, how we have to enhance the cooperation and coordination and information exchange with other states. There are goals are defined there, like reducing national vulnerability to cyber attack, preventing cyber attacks and cyber crime, and then reducing the time need for the response and recovery. And then effective cybercrime investigation is the goal of the cybersecurity policy. So in summary, so we discuss about the ITU cybersecurity, global cybersecurity index, we discuss the cyber readiness index, we discuss cyber power index, and there are other index for the assessment of the countries, how well the countries are doing in this cyber security. So those details are available. Cyber wellness profiles of countries are there. You can have a look at the cyber profile, wellness profile of different countries at the ITU website. Then we discuss the cyber security strategy. The countries, I have given you references of paper, the document that you can use for the national cyber security strategies. We discuss the national cyber security policy of India and its goal and the plan and the dimensions of a focus. So that's all for this session. Thank you.
स्वाध्यायः